Hello, I'm David Lummis, and I'm here with David Sprinkle to talk about our new pet population and ownership trends report. David and I both worked on this report as members of the Packaged Facts market research team. David, there's plenty of interesting findings in this report, one of which is, despite what we were hearing all throughout COVID, is that pet population growth has remained relatively flat.
It has. It's actually really interesting. COVID had a mixed effect. Among your more prosperous, professional, upper income households, including those who could telecommute from home, there certainly was a boomlet of pet adoption across types of pets. But on the other hand, among your lower income households, those who might be more budget conscious, there was some cutting back on pet ownership. So while there was a boomlet, which is certainly evident in sales figures, and while there was, without any question, significant dollar sales gain, there was in fact a pretty flat pet population when all the factors are sorted out. And even though from the retail end and the manufacturing end, there tended to be a consensus really that there was this overall boom from the veterinary channel, tracking the annual visits, tracking the medical supplies associated with your general checkups. There was, from the beginning, skepticism that there was, in fact, an overall jump in pet population. And also, after maybe 3 months of the boomlet, the veterinarians were no longer really seeing a disproportionate level of new patients. So all that to say, it more or less came out in the wash in terms of the factors that were helping to grow the pet population and those that were in fact headwinds, tending to hold it back. So you can see now from our report, this is looking at 218, at 222 projected, and at 226, there was a small incremental drop in pet ownership overall, from 54% of households to 52%. Again, the sky is not falling down, but there was a drop. We do get quarterly data on this, and once the data started coming in, we have had several quarters that are confirming this trend, this finding. A lot of that really was from dogs. And so if you can see the breakouts, the percentage of households owning dogs fell from 42% to 39%. So that's really where the drop was. Flat ownership rates for cats at 23%, and also some increase in ownership of pets other than dogs and cats. This is fish, birds, small mammals, reptiles, etc. And there's been a consensus throughout that there was sort of a boomlet in these other pets. But dogs are the most popular pets, and they're also the hardest pets to keep, the most expensive pets to keep, the ones sort of most dependent on housing type. So you can see that there was this incremental decline in dogs, which brought down the overall pet population. We do see this basically leveling out again by 226. And we can talk about that with further slides.
Right, and that dog population decline would be all the more significant since dogs are such a huge part of the overall market. Right now, I hesitate to say that we're post-COVID, but we are hopefully post the worst of the pandemic. So we're sort of in a different market environment now. There are still a lot of things that have carried over from the COVID era into the present, and there are currently also some new headwinds to pet population growth. One of the things that's on everyone's mind right now is the high level of inflation, the rising prices of consumer goods, high mortgage interest rates, which are dampening household formation. So all of those should be viewed really as negative factors to pet population ownership and certainly pet population growth. But there are other factors at play in the market as well, including generational patterns.
Right, and definitely, it's sort of all of the above that is in play. Keep in mind that pets are ultimately discretionary spending. People don't stop spending on their pets once they have them. but it can give pause with economic uncertainty, with inflation. It can give pause to actually taking on new pets. Also keep in mind that with high inflation rates and high mortgage interest rates, that does dampen household formation. And new household formation is one of the prime occasions for adopting new pets, and especially, of course, dogs, which are particularly tied to housing type. But the generational factor is really important, and it is just sort of a hard bedrock fact. In fact, David, you were asking, I think 10, maybe 15 years ago in reports on the pet market, what's going to happen when boomers retire? Because conventionally, once you get to retirement age, you really cut back on pet ownership. And so that was a question of the market 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Several things happened that softened that effect and postponed it. One thing is that seniors, your older seniors, held on to pet ownership longer than had been the case in the past. Your boomers, as we became seniors, held on to pet ownership longer than had been the case in previous generations. And also Gen X and millennials were very gung-ho about owning pets. So all of those things sort of softened and delayed the effect of what happens when the boomers, as a large population bulb, did move out of your traditionally prime retirement age. And what this shows with a generational map is you can see that while pet ownership is increasing for Gen Z, obviously, these are roughly your college age adults. You can see here in 2017, there were 2.1 million Gen Zers with pets. By 2022, 5 years later, there were 6.5 million, just rounding off. Millennials, some growth, but not tremendous growth there. A growth in 1.5 million pet owning households who are millennials between 2017 and 2022. But then by Gen X, you start to see declines in the number of households of that generation. And then you also start seeing bigger declines of nearly 3 million among your boomers and your pre-boomers, your older seniors now, who are age 75 plus. So what's happening here is just with sort of the turn of the generational wheels, and especially the boomers as a generational bulge, is that more people are aging out of your pet ownership years than are aging in.
And this really is a typical historical pattern. It's something that the pet market had been hoping to avoid. They've been very optimistic in the sense that boomers had traditionally been rule breakers. And as you said, David, boomers did hold on to their pets longer than had been the case in the past, but it does now seem to be sort of reverting to form in terms of seniors being less likely to own pets for all kinds of reasons, partly because of the work involved, partly because of the living environments. A lot of times they'll be moving into smaller living situations, assisted living, and so forth. So this is not really new, but it is something that the pet market was sort of optimistically hoping would not happen this time around. That said, despite the economic and demographic challenges facing the market, the pet industry remains very strong, perennially strong, as long as we've been tracking it. I think that the only time I can remember seeing a decline in any of the major sectors of the market was during COVID, when we saw a fall off in non-medical pet services because of the social distancing and home isolating at home and so forth. At the same time, we saw other sectors of the market boom during COVID: pet food, non-food pet supplies. And part of the reason for that, probably the main reason for that, is what we've been calling the pets as family trend, also for quite a few years now. It seems to be the affection that Americans feel for their pets keeps them spending almost no matter what in the pet market. We've been asking the survey question for probably at least a decade. Do you view your pets as part of the family? And it's gotten to the point now where pet owners who do not view their pets as part of the family are something of an endangered species.
Right. And actually, I don't know that the actual percentages that you're seeing here in terms of agreeing with dogs and cats as part of the family, I don't know if they've changed that much in the last decade. If you went back further, I think you might have a lot more somewhat agree than strongly agree. But what has been the case in recent years and has been driving, a very bullish pet market is that almost ignore the strongly agree, ignore the somewhat agree, look at the somewhat disagree and strongly disagree. Basically no one virtually no one disagrees with this. And what has happened is that the implication of this sense of this mentality that pets are part of the family are really integral to the household, the ramifications of that mentality have kept changing. We saw it really first and most obviously and continue to see it in pet food. Blue did very well with its slogan, love them like family and feed them like family. But then it's gone, it still includes pet food, but it's gone beyond that to veterinary services, to the non-medical services like grooming and boarding, even to non-food supplies, into standards and expectations really across the pet market of products and services. And so this sense of pets as family is in fact what makes the market so strong. It's also particularly strong because this sense of considering your pets to be part of the family is essentially stable across generations. You can see for strongly agree, it's in the 75% to 81% range across generations. Minor modulations, but not important. And especially again, look at someone disagree. Look at that should be strongly disagree. Basically, very, very fractional percentage of pet owners don't agree across generations that pets are part of the family.
Right. And we've seen a direct correlation between the intensity of that sentiment and the willingness to spend heavily on pet products and services. Quite a few surveys have shown there to be a pretty straight line there. Right now, one of the other things that we've been talking about for many years is the recession resiliency of the market. The pet market has become famous for that. Even during COVID, as I mentioned before, we saw certain areas of the market booming. Pet owners were spending more time at home, which meant they were spending more time with their pets, which meant that those already strong bonds with their pets were becoming even stronger because of the need for companionship, the increased need for companionship and comfort. So those are all positive factors for the market. Right now, the market, as we've also mentioned before, is facing some challenges in terms of recessionary conditions, in terms of inflation. Supply chain issues have come to the fore. But when we look across all of the household spending categories, what we're still seeing is that pet spending still tends to be extremely sticky.
It does. And you can see, we asked this question in August. We asked, are you cutting back on household expenses, because of the economy, because of inflation, because of uncertainty? And a majority of US households are. But then when we ask, okay, what types of expenses are you cutting back on? You can see that pet care expenses and medical expenses are the ones that households were least likely to be cutting back on. And so they were definitely cutting back on eating out, on away from home entertainment, clothing, footwear. You're not really going out, on travel expenses. But you can see here that even when there is some cutting back, it least affects the medical expenditures and also pet care expenditures. So that's a very strong point for the market, why it has a reputation that's well deserved as being recession resistant. and why it also has a very strong prospects in the future. And actually, it's not a coincidence that it is the health expenses, whether human or pet, that are being most sticky. You can see here that there's a very high level of recognition with the with the roles pet in physical health and be important to your physical health, but even more so with your mental health. And these again are very strong findings across generations. So in a way, it could be said essentially that the pet market is a health market, both in terms of the health of the pet parents, but also in terms of this very significant attention to pet health and wellness, including new areas of concerns about pet health and wellness in products and services.
And there's a growing body of science that is really supporting those beliefs that pets are directly beneficial to human physical and mental health. So that's a very positive factor looking ahead in the market. Um, One of the other impacts of the pets as family trend has been sort of as an underpinning of two other trends that have been much talked about in the market, which are premiumization and humanization, which are obviously very related. The more we treat our pets as family, the more we're willing to spend on them, and that's particularly for products and services that are directly health related. Um, and as long as the pets as family trend remains strong, I believe that we can continue to count on the pet market to perform extremely well, pretty much despite the economic uncertainty that we're currently facing. Um, and then we've also got the pet pampering factor, which so it's not just health and wellness; it's also just wanting to treat our pets and keep them happy and keep them healthy as long as we possibly can. Well, that's about it for today. Thank you for joining us very much as we continue to track the pet market. And please check out our complete collection of pet market reports at packagedfacts.com.